Hi, my name is Richard Rishala, and I'm here with John Degnan, who's running for the 99th Assembly District in New York State. John has been a mayor and a trustee in the Village for Brewster over 10 years and is now running, as I mentioned before, for the 99th Assembly District. John, thank you for coming.
Thank you, Richard.
I've been going around the countryside, and everywhere I go, I see these signs plastered all over the countryside that illegal immigration is illegal. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, that comes back to Record 2. Mr. Ball has spent 3 years telling us illegal is illegal. And no one I know is in favor of illegal immigration. We favor immigration, according to the laws of our land. So here's Mr. Ball chanting this wherever he goes, promising to deliver us from the issues of illegal immigration. And in fact, he has not one reform, not one arrest, not one deportation. He continues to spread fear-mongering and intimidation strictly to bring his voting base out.
Tell me what you've done.
Again, come back to the record. The first police department in the Village of Brewster since 1977. Doubling of the building department resources. In fact, our building inspector works from 5 p.m. to 8 p.m. until further notice performing inspections. A property registration form that basically tells us points of contact and the understanding of who the tenancies are and the ownership is. Water meters on every single household. So
What's that for?
Well, water meters allow us to bill on a volume basis. You pay for what you use. But if we see large spikes in the use of water in any one account, we understand that we're either looking at bad plumbing or we're looking at overcrowding. And by state law, without regard to color, creed, without racial profiling, we can go in and inspect. So from my responsibilities in the Village of Brewster relative to illegal immigration, it has always been about assuring the health, safety, and welfare of the community at large. I could go on with stuff that we've accomplished. We put video cameras on Main Street. We've held law enforcement seminars where we've brought Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, the FBI, the Putnam County Sheriff's Department, the state troopers, the Village Police Department, DEP Police, MTA Police, all came together to figure out how we can ensure the safety of our community, the health, safety, and welfare of our community. So I'm a guy who is tough on crime. I'm a guy who says, let's give the men and women of law enforcement the tools that they need to do a better job in not only responding to crime and investigating crime, but also preventing it.
That's progress.
Thank you.
John, I've heard you speak about modest goals. What do you mean by that?
Modest goals. I think that when you get into a position where you're approaching crisis, that the most important thing you can do is bring your root cause analysis to the table. What's causing these things? I know when I speak of modest goals, I'm talking about self-reliance, home ownership, a decent job, and the ability to educate our children. To me, that's the American dream, and it's getting further and further from the grasp of the common man. And the reason I put these things in terms of modest goals is to understand it doesn't have to be complicated, folks. We are having systemic problems throughout all of our governance in New York State. Let's make sure that our goals and objectives can be achieved. And I think that by stating these modest goals on a house-by-house basis, that's a pretty easy thing to talk about. It's going to be awfully complicated to solve them. So let's not overdo it. Let's stick with modest goals.
John, is this race just about Brewster?
No, Richard. It's important that voters in the 99th Assembly District understand records. And I know that Brewster has been in the spotlight during this campaign because it does go to my record. And Mr. Ball has made a point of saying to us, look at what's going on in Brewster. Where Greg Ball has torn my community apart, he really hasn't done anything for all the other communities in the 99th. So Brewster has gotten a lot of focus here. But I recognize that the 99th Assembly District takes in Paulding, Patterson, Carmel, Mahopac, Southeast Brewster, Yorktown, Somers, and North Salem. And the interesting thing about this district is that it does not have one urban center. The demographics are very similar through all 7 of the towns that we're having to deal with and to represent in the best way that we can. I know that property tax reform is at the top of all people in all towns. I know that we have to do a better job with our energy policy because it's going to affect households throughout the entire district. I know that we have to focus on those modest goals that will provide economic security that everybody is seeking within the 99th. So I'm asking my opponent, let's get on the issues. The goals and objectives of what my term will be in the Assembly has been clearly stated and set forth. If you choose to look at my record, then look at what I've done in the Village of Brewster. Public service, Richard, not politics.
Healthcare, where do you stand?
When I look at the issues of healthcare, I know that Medicaid and Medicare have literally billions of dollars of fraud, corruption, and abuse within the system. I know that the previous governor did his best to address them, and those numbers just continue to grow. Folks, it comes back to accountability and recognizing that we need to check these issues. We need to start with a benchmark. We need to look to improve on a daily basis and then pick a point in the future where we go back and we measure our improvement. Healthcare reform is spiraling. We know that. Healthcare costs are spiraling. We know that. We know the cost of prescriptive drugs are increasing at alarming rates. I know of one drug that has increased over 8,000%, and it's used to deal with spasms that children may be going through, babies. So this is an extremely complicated issue. And rather than being caught up in the complexities and throwing up our hands and saying, how can we possibly deal with this? I'm saying, bring it back to accountability. Count those dollars, make every one of them count. Let's eliminate fraud. Let's eliminate abuse. Let's eliminate waste. And once we get there, to the best of our ability, then we can take a step forward and say, how can we do this job better? Let's take care of our old business before we adopt new laws, before we adopt new policies. There's plenty of room for improvement. It just takes the will and the leadership to get it done.
After all this work you've done on the sewer and infrastructure, you've become an expert on the environment. You want to talk about that?
Sure. It's pretty interesting if you overlay the 99th Assembly District map with the map of the east of Hudson watershed, they fit glove in hand, or hand in glove, excuse me. The New York City Department of Environmental Protection is the largest landowner and taxpayer in Putnam County. And that east of Hudson watershed extends down into the three towns of Westchester that the 99th represents. I say that the New York City Department of Environmental Protection has to have a bigger role at the table. If we as a community, the communities of the 99th, are charged to maintain New York City water quality, then let's make sure that New York City is engaged in what it takes to preserve these pristine natural resources. It's the largest source of unfiltered water in North America. The east of Hudson watershed supplies 100 million gallons of drinking water a day to New York City. New York City does have a bigger role at the table, and I believe that I am best suited to sit down with New York City and to understand the nuances and the way they do business, and to work with the senior members of DEP to get the job done. Folks, my record has already demonstrated that. We are looking at huge revenue costs that need to be dealt with when it comes to the issues of the environment in the east of Hudson watershed. Let's make sure we elect a leader that knows what it takes to work with DEP and to bring the money home that will pay for these improvements. DEP is often seen as a big monster in the room to folks who would like to develop or see business flourish. On the contrary, DEP can be a partner. They are a great partner to the community that I represented, and I look forward to working with the supervisors and the town boards throughout the east of Hudson, as well as the county governments, to see the issues of the environment maintain its position at the table. Let's not slide back when our economy is struggling. Let's make sure that we put our economy in balance with environmental issues and our social responsibilities, because that's what sustainability is. And when we can get to that equilibrium and balance, we're going to see some very positive things. And in fact, as I've said for many years, if we take the right policy and the right approach in the east of Hudson watershed, our policies, actions, and processes can be seen as a model for all communities of watersheds in this great country of ours.
John, thank you very much.
Hey, and don't forget to vote for John Degnan for the 99th Assembly District. Thank you.
Thank you, John.